Now, we all agree everything has shifted, hasn't it? So, are we getting back to normal? And if so, what do we want the new normal that we're all talking about? What do we actually want it to look like? Well, my next guest have shone a light on how people-powered innovation is now reshaping our world. For example, and I mentioned this before, the 17-year-old high school dropout who created the world's most... Telling us more about this is David Price. He is the author of a new book, The Power of Us, How We Connect, Act and Innovate Together. David, welcome to the afternoon show.
Thanks, Joe.
So what has changed then?
Well, as you suggested, pretty much everything. And we hear this phrase, the new normal. I'm not sure that the old normal was that great to begin with. So I think there's certainly some very positive things have come on the back of this pandemic. Not diminishing the dreadful effect that it's had on people, but I think the world of work has changed. World of education is changing dramatically, and that's just part of it. The world of innovation has been the area I think that's seen the biggest change.
And do you think this is survival? I mean, like the human race, it can be shaken up, spat out, but it will reshape itself just in the name of survival.
Well, I think we are an incredibly ingenious species, and we're probably seeing more grassroots innovation because of the pandemic, simply because, necessity is the mother of invention. And we've seen some incredible acts of coordination and networking in ways that I think that governments haven't been able to match. The phrase I use in the book is communities are outperforming bureaucracies. And I really do believe that to be true.
So give us some examples then. I mean, here on this show, and as I say, we've been broadcasting throughout the whole of this, and we see things, we see patterns arrive. The whole Zoom thing, for example, we saw that people wanted to communicate. I mean, actually, that sort of, I sometimes think the shelf life of that has almost worn out. But you see friendship groups starting and people pulling together. And then, as I said today, this latest report is that people who are working from home are actually proven to be working longer than they would if they were going into the office. So you can see things like that occurring. What are some of the other things you've noticed?
Well, yes, I'd agree with all of that. As a freelancer, that's always been the case. I've worked from home for the past 15 years, I guess. And you do tend to work longer, but there are compensations to that. You can walk the dog whenever you feel like it. So there's swings and roundabouts. But the most remarkable thing, I think, is the way in which young people particularly have responded. So I use the example of Avi Schiffman, I think you referred to him, the 17-year-old from Seattle, who invented a COVID tracking website, which Anthony Fauci says is the most authoritative source when he needs up-to-date, reliable information. And he did that in 3 days. And the US government has been unable to do that since the pandemic began. And if we look at what's happened in this country, I think we've seen, organisations like Scrub Hubs just come together to supply the PPE that the government was failing to do at the start of the pandemic.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I'm listening to you, yes, and I remember all of these, the equivalent to food banks, people. We have beauty vloggers, and I know you'll think this is, very superficial.
No, not at all. No.
They who are all sent this stuff had then started banks where they would take it to NHS workers, where the masks were causing all their skin to be aggravated, and these people sorted it out for themselves.
Correct. 1,000 face group, interest groups sprung up within the first week of that pandemic. It was remarkable.
Isn't it? And the fact, and just neighbourliness. Sorry, I do sound very Pollyanna-ish, but just people saying, can you just check on the people either side? Whoops, I don't know if that. Oops,
that's my phone. I'm really sorry.
Don't worry. I'll lower it. You can
I've
answer
got
the
it.
call.
No, I've got it.
Either side, check on your neighbours. Just check and then do their shopping, because you can't always order online. I remember when their websites for shopping online crashed, so people would start their own distribution centres in their road.
Exactly. And this was at the time when you know, the great irony was we were all in lockdown. We were supposed to be unconnected, and yet communities were probably more connected, more looking out for each other than had been before lockdown.
What do you think will be? I mean, it's a big ask to ask you to predict this. You know, this whole thing about working from home, people being encouraged to work from home. Now they're being encouraged to get back to work, but not to go on the tube. I mean, there's so many mixed messages. What do you predict then? Do you think people will just go their own? Oh gosh, those of us who can, freelancers, can go their own way, and the others will still have to do what they're being told to do?
I suspect not. You know, particularly in the new tech industries, we saw Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, say, you know, from now on, if you never come into the office, that's okay. You can work from home in perpetuity. But I think you were right. I think the whole Zoom culture has kind of run its course. And for me, you know, I speak publicly, and I don't want to do any more webinars. I want to be in a room with people. So I think that's the same for employees, but it'll be a blend. You know, I don't think any office will expect all of its people in Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And I think if organisations do insist upon that, then I think they'll find it really difficult to recruit talent.
Isn't it weird? I mean, when did this? I'm not going to call it social engineering. It suited us. But when, you know, today on this show, we were reporting on research that shows that school children, I do not mean the generation that have been so mixed up with all these exam results, but the others who weren't waiting for exam results, they are so less stressful. I mean, it's so obvious. It's obvious they're at home. They're less stressed. But we were led to believe, no, they were getting stressed because they weren't at school with their mates. And yet this research showed that they were less stressful not going to school. People have been shown to produce more when they're working from home. You know, what do you think? It's just the novelty value of this? Do you think eventually, like you were saying, people are going to want to see other people? Kids really do need to go to school to meet their mates. Do you think it is just the novelty of this chapter that's showing us all these results?
In part, but I think, you know, we have to be honest.
I'm him away with my question, or with
no, it's fine.
You there?
Yes, can you
Sorry,
still hear me?
We lost you there. Can you just start your answer?
Yes. So I think we've got to accept that for a lot of kids, school is a place where they get bullied, and they can be bullied online. But it actually, when they were learning from home, they were learning at their pace. I meet with school teachers and principals of schools who say that some of the kids have really flourished when they've not had to be at school. And so I think it's not just a coincidence, and I don't necessarily see it as being a phase that we'll go through. I think it's a much more sophisticated mix that we'll have going forward. Like I say, it wasn't working that well to begin with.
But you see, then you get parents who go, but I can't deal with having my kids home all day, you know, because, you know, so it suits a lot of parents that they're put in an institution for 8 hours a day, doesn't it?
No, absolutely.
So, you know, the whole thing is shaken up. You know, the parents are going, well, we can't work with them hanging around all day, and we want someone to take them off our hands.
Yes, and you do wonder, the government suddenly become interested in young people's long-term futures. I don't remember them being quite so interested before. You know, there is a let's face it.
I agree with you.
There is a large element of schooling which is frankly childminding. You know, it's cheap childminding. And that's not how it should be. But I do think that what we're starting to see is young people who are. The point I'm making in the book is that we need to engage with users of services because 54% of all new innovations come from the users themselves. Never is this more applicable to schooling. You know, how often are young people consulted over the kind of learning that they want to do?
But and this is interesting, isn't it? Because we gave young people such a hard time over technology. Technology has rescued all of us during this. You know, telling them to get off their iPads, get off the computers and everything. It's actually rescued us. Where on earth would we have been without technology?
Quite. And we also have to recognise that left to their own devices, these young people are doing amazing things. The two largest public protests in the history of our species were organised in the past 2 years by a bunch of school kids. That's Greta Thunberg's school strikes and the Parklands, Florida kids who did the March for Life for gun control. And they did it because they're so hyper-connected now. And the technology is working for them. It's just not being reflected in the schools, because I look at what employers are looking for, and they're looking to see, how big is your personal network? How many people do you know? Well, many of these kids have enormous networks.
Yes. Oh my God, yes, I envy them. They do.
Yep.
They literally do. I mean, I can tell you, every walk of life, you're judged with how many followers you have.
Correct.
That's how it works. You know, in this racket, in most rackets, how many followers do you have? And that's what you're judged by. Well, they've all started out with thousands. Those are their so-called friends, aren't they?
Exactly. And where's the GCSE in networking? You know, it's just not being recognised and validated.
Gosh, I've got to read this book. It's called The Power of Us. It's out now. You must have got that out quickly.
Well, I'd actually finished writing the book in March, and I was working in Australia.
Oh my goodness, you must have had to rewrite that rapidly.
Yes,
didn't you?
that's right. I rewrote the whole book in 3 weeks.
You must have thought, there is a God. This is manna from heaven. This is validated. I mean, I'm sure it was a fantastic book beforehand, but it must have totally validated everything you were writing about.
It did, and it made me realise that, you know, it wasn't the kind of deranged ramblings of a lunatic, that there actually was something in this.
It's so good to speak to you. Thank you, David Price
And
Obi.
you, Jo.
If you want to read the book, The Power of Us, fascinating reading, it is out now.
Thanks ever so much for joining us, David.
Thanks, Amy. That was great. She's really good.
She's good fun.
Yeah, she is.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of the week.
And you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.